call the meeting to order at, I guess, 2:37 or 38. May we do a roll call, please?
Thank you. I'll take roll call. Chair Sorgman.
Here.
Vice Chair Spieler is absent. Board Member Kuntz.
Here.
Board Member Langhorn is also absent. Board Member Maloney.
Here.
Board Member Marston.
Here.
We have quorum. And then just a quick reminder to staff and the board members, if you are speaking, please make sure your mic is on. We do have a recording going on today, and the only way you can record anything is if we are on our mics. So please make sure we are doing that. Thank you so much.
Is it possible to bring up the volume in the room?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to open this up to public comment. If there is any member who's attending here that has a public comment on any item that is not on the agenda. So I don't see any. And is this being,
It's not being live streamed, so we don't have any Zoom component to it.
all right then, just wanted to make sure about that. All right, so then we need approval of the minutes for the last May 2nd, 2024 meeting was the last time we met. And so if someone wants to make a motion to approve the minutes, and I need a second for that.
This is John Maloney. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Is there someone that seconds that?
Okay, fine. I will second that motion.
All right, so then all of those in favor of approving the minutes from the May 2nd, 2024 meeting without any revisions, say aye.
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 All right. So do we have any announcements or requests by the appellants for any continuance, withdrawals, or future items and appeals? Nope. Then we'll proceed. So we have the first item that is being heard is 1165, and that is the ratification of a hardship for 1165 Coast Village Road. So I think staff is going to give their presentation.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. Thank you for being here. Today, I'm going to present to you the staff report for your consideration of ratification of a hardship for the project at 1165 Coach Village Road. That is building permit 2025-00295. A little bit about the project. The scope of work for this permit is, let me just fix this real quick. Consists of a tenant improvement to an existing 3,400 square foot single tenant office space to be converted into 3 separate office spaces. No exterior changes are proposed. As it relates to the cost of providing access, because the construction valuation is more than the threshold of $203,611 per the current 2025 threshold, the California State Building Code requires full compliance with path to travel requirements, provided this does not create an unreasonable hardship. Projects that are above the threshold are required to invest at the very least a minimum of 20% of the project cost towards path to travel improvements. Currently, there are no alterations that have taken place in the past 3 years. 20% of the construction valuation for this project is $70,000. The applicant has committed to spending $82,900 on accessibility improvements that include an accessible path to travel from the accessible parking stalls to each entrance leading to the areas of alteration, which constitutes 23% of the construction costs, or the cost of construction. Full compliance with the path to travel requirements would necessitate installing an elevator to provide access from the public right-of-way to the lower levels or areas of alteration. Although site constraints do not make the installation of an elevator infeasible, the applicant has explored the option to provide an exterior lift as a more affordable solution. As part of the cost anticipated construction that is contemplated, the project has an estimated construction cost of $250,000. The proposed lift solution would add an additional cost of $262,800 for a grand total of $612,000. or 175% of the original project budget. The cost for a full elevator would be substantially higher. In relationship to the impact of code-mandated access improvements on the financial feasibility of the project, the $262,800 cost of required accessibility improvements represents an additional 75% of the original cost of construction. Nature of hardship, which would be gained or lost by granting a hardship. The site will continue to have access at the on-site arrival The site will continue to have accessible on-site arrival access by means of an accessible van and standard parking stalls, which will provide an accessible route to the areas of alteration. Nature of the use of the facility under construction and its availability to persons with disabilities. The existing office campus at 1165 Coach Village Road has direct access to all upper-level services from Coach Village Road Public Way. Accessible access to all lower services will continue to be provided using accessible parking stalls and associated compliant accessible route to each entry of the areas of alteration. Currently, there is no direct interior means connecting the lower-level offices to the upper-level offices. There is an exterior stairway as shown on Exhibit A. Recommendation to the board. Considering the above, the city building official recommends ratification of the request for hardship, eliminating the elevator or lift upgrade. The architect of record has provided the following information for consideration in their hardship request. A cover sheet noting the scope of work and a site plan, sheet A000, which is Exhibit A, an access compliance form, construction evaluation form, and construction estimate for Mickelson Construction, which is sheet A0.06 or Exhibit B. And that is the end of my staff report.
All right, so I would like to make some comments, and then I think other board members may have some comments. I did send you an email because I was hoping that we wouldn't waste the time of the applicant to point out that there were mistakes on the access compliance form and that the site plan wasn't completely clear in terms of what features were compliant that should be included on the plan, because it makes it really hard for me to be able to review it clearly and make a determination to support what your finding has been. So I was hoping that you had enough time, because I submitted my information to you the day after, and I never got a response from anyone. And I was, again, hoping that you would reach out to the applicant to be able to update the information so that then we would have time to be able to review. So I myself do not feel comfortable making a decision on this because I don't have sufficient information. Some of the information that I pointed out in the email were just things that aren't compliant or things that are not on the site plan that would show what the elements that constitute path of travel, that they should be there and they're not.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you for the question, and we did receive the email. Keep in mind that the information being provided to you is really looking at the numbers, the big numbers for the cost of construction, the overall cost to provide the lift or the elevator in relationship to the scope of the work, right, just the construction costs. There are definitely some elements in what been provided to you that are still being ironed out in plan check. Those questions are being asked for the applicant. Not only were there a couple of things that were not properly documented on the form, but in the big picture, it doesn't take away from the fact that this is a hardship, and we would like the board to opine on that. Some of the questions on your email, the appellant can address those during this hearing, so we feel like it can still move forward and have enough information to you, board members of the board, to make that determination. In the more specific or technical questions that you provided to us, I can address those if you like during this meeting. A lot of those were already addressed in previous building permits. There was a site accessibility that where those accessible stalls were approved under the 2019 code cycle. And then also the tenant improvement that triggered those were also approved under a tenant improvement on 2019. Which I believe you had the pleasure of reviewing that and approving that. So based on what the scope of the consideration for the hardship and knowing that there's some other plan check related items that we're still working with the applicant, we still feel like this is enough information for the board, especially with having staff and the appellant address some questions, specific questions you might have.
Yeah, so my comment to that is, I mean, on this access compliance form, it should have information like the handrails aren't compliant. And so that should have been documented as a cost that would go towards this, upgrading path of travel obligations. So there are other things that should be documented in order for us to say, okay, this will be included as part of the solution. And so you're just asking us to kind of ignore it and let it be caught in plan check and let it be picked up by inspectors, and that doesn't always happen. We all make mistakes, and so the hope is that the information is accurate, that you show what needs to be completed and made accessible, and so I just find the application incomplete.
Yeah, thank you for that, Madam Chair. And what I would say to that, like, for example, what you mentioned about the guards and the extensions, that, I'm not sure if you're referring to the existing stairways and those handrails, and, because you mentioned something about the thread and riser and contrasting stripes, specifically to the rails that are leading from the accessible aisle into the pedestrian way as part of the ramp.
Right.
Those, I believe they're being provided because there's a vertical difference of greater than 4 inches. So it's not part of a required handrail. It's more of having a fall prevention or trip hazard. Normally, there would be a curb, but the code allows you to have an exception to have a rail. And it's because there is a pedestrian way, as I understand the plans that were previously approved. So it's a little bit different than the handrail requirements for a true ramp, as,
So
you know.
you're talking about the curb ramp?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So, again, those are really technical things that we can continue to work with the applicant, but in the big picture, the numbers are still there that would warrant the consideration from the board as to whether or not there'd be a hardship.
All right. So the other thing is, I am familiar with the site, and did anyone explore the ability to be able to go on the side and use a ramp that would be compliant? You know, you can only go up 30 inches, and you have a resting, and then you go up. Was that explored at all, and was that cost taken a look at to see? That would be an easy way to make it compliant, not to have an elevator, not to have a lift. And so was that explored? Was anything given to you to show that that could be a viable option?
Thank you for that question, Chairman, or Madam Chair. We did not get into all those options. The first option that was presented to us, which is, an option allowed by the code, was a lift. To your point, and I appreciate you being familiar with the site, that driveway that brings you from Coach Village Road into the lower parking, at least in the plans of the original construction, shows a 12% slope in there. Is there enough space between the vehicular way and still having a required ramp with the right widths and all? That was not explored. I think that would be a good question to ask the appellant when this is turned 2%.
Okay, thank you. Does any member have a question regarding the plans or the compliance form?
Yeah, I noticed the same concerns with lack of completion of the applicant, specifically the access compliance checklist, and there's no mention of the bathroom facilities at all, whether they're currently compliant, whether they need to be brought into compliance under this application. And that's a big question mark for me, and I'm very concerned that any potential hardship ratification that was perhaps granted today might be misconstrued as an overarching ratification that someone could try to claim or avoid doing other requirements. And so I would be inclined to move for a continuation of this until the application was complete.
Madam Chair and Board Member Kuntz, I hear you and I agree with, we don't want to give the impression that a hardship like this is gonna be like a blank check or something that's gonna be applied to the whole facility. The scope of the project is converting a single tenant space into 3 separate tenant spaces. Each one of those tenant spaces is gonna have their own restroom. and those restrooms will be compliant as part of the tenant improvement itself. There, to the best of my knowledge, and we can have the appellant who's better familiar with the facility, there are no shared restrooms. Each one of those tenant spaces will be served by their own restroom.
Okay. Well, am I to understand that they've gotten through this point without showing accessibility in those restrooms? On the plans?
Madam Chair and Board Member Coons, absolutely not. We asked those questions, and that's being shown in the construction documents.
Okay.
I might be missing something, but I don't see anything on here on the bathrooms, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I also don't see anything about stair striping. You mentioned it. You kind of glossed over that. Aren't they required to stripe these stairs from the upper level, lower to the bottom?
Yeah, that's a great question, Madam Chair and Board Member Marston. The scope of work describes not in detail, to your point, about the restroom, so that is true on what has been presented to you. Again, as far as the hardship and the cost is still there. The stairs, they would not be applicable because they're not part of the path of travel. There's also exceptions when you're not doing alterations to stairs, that you don't have to make some of those elements compliant. There's also an exception for buildings under 3 stories that are not required to have vertical connection or path of travel in the form of like an elevator. So there's a few exceptions in there that, that's the reason we did not address the stairs. If there were new stairs or some steps would be an alter as part of this, we would definitely ask for those as well.
So, you know, I'm going to disagree with you.
I was
And-
going to also.
Yeah,
more than
and I
do.
think there is, I'm sorry. Oh, it is on. Yeah, I think there is, you know, circulation paths that would require at least for the striping to happen, which is an easy thing. And likely, if I looked at past compliance forms, it would say that it was compliant and it somehow got missed, you know, didn't get picked up by an inspector or somehow it got missed. So let's check into that to see, because I think circulation paths may trigger that. Because you're, in essence, you're telling someone you're arriving at the upper portion, and there's no wayfinding sign to let them know that they're going to go, you have to go around to get parking. And same thing when you go to the lower level, there's no wayfinding signage. So there were just a lot of things that were missing that weren't shown, that you're looking at the totality of everything in the circulation, which is why I'm uncomfortable even hearing it, just because it seems like it's incomplete, and so, you know.
Yeah, I just want to respond to that, and I hear you, and I appreciate that. I agree with you that there's some information in the plans that are still in the technical side that is being considered in plan check. Again, if you're looking at the numbers of what the cost of the alteration is and to what the cost of providing that access to the upper level to the right-of-way, I still think that is to be considered by the board. You know, we can get into going over the technical parts and, you know, what the code may require or not. As I like to say, and by one of our trainers and very well-known CAS specialist,
Caparelli?
Caparelli, says you can get 2 CAS person in a room and have 4 different opinions. So I just think if we stay focused on what it is that we want to give direction to the appellant, it's still good time and good service from the board and also direction to the appellant.
Yes, and if, Chair Sorgman, if I may, and to the board, this is in plan review, obviously, still. After the either approval or denial of the ratification, we still have outstanding corrections, so we'll have an opportunity to address all of the other items. But we do feel there's sufficient information on the plan now to make the decision of a hardship.
To that, I hear Mr. Barajas bringing up the point of we have sufficient numbers here, but the bathrooms are a huge, potentially huge number that would change these percentages, and I have to see that before I can render a decision on this.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Board Member Coons, maybe I'll try again to explain the scope of the work. There are new restrooms being provided in each one of these. All those would be fully compliant. So actually that cost would not go into consideration for hardship because it's part of the alteration and must comply. So there is no cost that would go in the forms that you have, giving any kind of credit because it's new construction. And also is being altered. I think there's 1, maybe 2 that are being altered, and then a new one created. So
But-
that is all being considered.
Would it not then affect the percentage of money spent attributed to accessibility improvements?
It would, in the sense that is part of the adjusted construction cost, and that is the number that has been provided
Correct.
of to 350,000.
Very pertinent in my determination of whether or not this is a hardship.
To be clear, Board Member Coons, the cost of the restroom
The
improvement,
percentage of expense towards accessibility improvements as relates to the entire project.
yes, the cost to make the restrooms that are new construction fully compliant is in the 350,000, which actually increases the percentage that they have to be responsible for. In this case, in a way, it's somewhat of a moot point because they're over the threshold, so they have to spend a minimum of that
Correct.
percentage.
Correct.
And those new elements, the restrooms, are fully compliant. So all the money that's going to path to travel improvements, it's going all towards non-compliant elements
Okay.
as part of the path to travel requirements.
Yeah, and I'm just going to comment, it was standard practice to, anything that's brand new has to comply, so it doesn't necessarily contribute towards the hardship. It just, it's new, it will be built new, and so there's no credit for that because you have to make it compliant.
Okay.
So,
I
John?
have a comment here. I understand developers and architects want to save money, and all the time on this board, I hear these overinflated estimates of elevators and stuff. And I'm shocked that I don't see any quote from anyone here with this $200 and some thousand just for the lift. And as was brought up earlier, nothing about just putting a nice ramp on the west side driveway. And you would not have to do this at all. And I also don't understand why they're looking at the patio and calling that an accessibility improvement. Can anyone explain that?
well, the appellant will do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I can answer the part on the, maybe I lost your first part of your question, Board Member Marston. The cost was provided to us from a licensed contractor. As you know, by our policy, we see that something is low, we will ask for additional information, including cost estimates by an approved estimating software. I think like our Madam Chair mentioned, more information can be provided with the appellant on that.
I guess my biggest fear here, and I seem like I hear it from other people, is why are we being asked to pass something on an uncompleted form? What's the hurry on getting this hardship waiver before they even fill out the form correctly and talk about access signage?
Part of my interruption, Mr. Marston, do you mind making sure your mic is on?
My light's on, I thought.
Thank you.
Should I start over?
It's on now.
I'm curious on what the purpose is of having this rush through the committee before we have a full scope of the actual dollar amounts being spent. And looking at the, putting the ramp on the west side, the striping on the stairs, the bathroom cost. There's a lot of signage that's missing and the handrails, and I don't understand that patio stuff, so maybe the appellant could explain that to us. But to me, this is being rushed through for some reason that no one has been able to explain to me why you want to vote now to get out of having to build the elevator with an incomplete form. This doesn't seem to be right at all to me.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Board Member Marston, I just want to say that we as staff would not provide you something that would not have enough information for you to make a determination. That would not be fair to the board, it would not be fair to the appellant, it would not be good customer service. We have a balance in providing good customer service and also making sure that the information that is needed for you to make a determination is there. And in this case, we brought it to you because there is enough in there. There's definitely questions to be asked on the technical side, as well as maybe some construction evaluation that the appellant can address. And we feel that information can be provided by your questions through their answers.
But my question is, why the rush to get the waiver now instead of waiting until you have all the numbers and the plans are correct? Why should we vote on something with incomplete plans? So I'd like somebody to tell me why the rush to get the waiver.
Yeah, it's a great question, Madam Chair, Board Member Marston. we feel that there is no rush on it. The board has the ability to board on it whichever way they want. We as staff made a determination that there was enough information, and with the appellant being here and answering some of those questions, it can be at. But we are in no way trying to rush the board. We feel that the information that is on there is enough for you to consider whether this is a hardship or not, because the big numbers are still there. You can ask the appellant if there's some more finite or tweaking on those, as well as some of the options as Madam Chair asked earlier.
Well, as I tried to point out, if they don't fix the patio and don't call that an accessibility issue, that reduces a whole bunch of how much they're spending on accessibility. And if we take the elevator out of there and do a ramp on the other side, there might be no reason to even have a waiver. So to me, this is way ahead of time to have the waiver request before we have all the information. And if somebody had looked at it, whether a CASP looked at it or more than one expert to see if this is correct, I just feel forced. So,
Yeah,
I'd like to address that, Jose. Thank you, Chair Sorgman and Board Member Marston. Jose Barajas is a CASP, by the way, and he has reviewed it. And we also have a couple of other CASPs on staff now, so we have had it reviewed by a staff member. The items that you are referring to are important, and we can add them, but it will not make a difference in the big picture. They still would qualify, in my opinion, for a hardship. So that's what we're asking the board to consider and ratify, knowing that we can ask some of those questions of the applicant today and also get that information on the plans before the permit's issued. At this point, it's still an application.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments? John? No.
if you have so many CASP on your board, why is it incomplete? Why are we giving something incomplete?
Thank you, Chair Sorgman and Board Member Marston. It's in the process of plan review, so it's not incomplete. If we have enough information here to make a determination, those other items, they're smaller items, will not affect the end determination of it being qualifying for a hardship or not.
I must have made myself clear. If you take the elevator out and do the ramp on the west side, and you don't get to count the patio work, then there is nothing's clear. So what do you mean by it's clear?
Thank you, Board Member Marston. What I mean is it's not permitted. It still has some plan review corrections. So that's what I mean by it's not cleared for permit issuance.
And if I may add to that, Madam Chair and Board Member Marston, those are the type of questions you can also ask as members of the board to the appellant. The design of the potential ramp, if that's feasible, and what the cost would be. Just to reiterate what our building official said, there's enough information. And as our Madam Chair knows, as a CAS and former plans examiner, some of the elements that are being asked are considered in there. They tend to play into path of travel costs, and some of them do not, and that's something that's still being ironed out in the plan check.
Thank you, Jose. And to the board, it would be a good time now to ask some of these questions of the applicant to get their answers.
Okay. Do you have any questions, John? No? Okay, thank you very much. Hi.
Hello, Madam Chair and board members. I am the applicant.
Pardon my interruption. If you can just turn your mics on, make sure the light is green, and then state your name for the records, please.
Marie Evans Schumacher, and I am the applicant, and I am here on behalf of the owner. And I've got the general contractor here. Some of the items that were just discussed that I would like to mention is Mr. Coons. On the access compliance form about the restrooms, we do say that they're compliant under this permit.
It's not what I saw in the packet I was given.
It says that it will be compliant.
Under this permit.
It's required and it will be compliant,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes. And I do, Board Member Marston, I do have pricing for the elevator broken out here. And then this provides you with pricing for the path of travel right here, and this is pricing for the lift. I believe you already have this document, but I don't think that you have the elevator broken out.
When you say path of travel, whereabouts? Not in the,
So-
not in the driveway, but someplace else?
No, this is path of travel going from the accessible parking into the suite entrances.
Okay.
And the problem is that the flagstone exceeds the 5% slope. And so if you look at the itemized pricing there, it indicates why we come up with a $66,700 number for that path of travel.
Now, is that a cross slope of 5% or a straight?
It's both. It's,
I thought it was more like 8 something, isn't it?
I think you can go up to 8% if you have a ramp. And so the
Right.
majority of that patio area doesn't exceed 5%, 4%. There's only a couple of spaces that do. So you could likely be able to reconfigure it in a different way that maybe you took advantage of a ramp so you wouldn't have to redo the entire thing. But I'm just curious, did you ever take a look at putting a pathway along the side? Because it would seem then you're code compliant. You have a ramp, you've got, I think you maximum of 30 inches. I don't know, but I mean, did anyone ever look at that?
now, can you just confirm that you're talking about?
Right here.
About that side?
Yeah.
No, we did not look at that.
All right, so then can we ask you to look at that? I mean, because it could be that you don't need a hardship application, that you might be able to be compliant that way.
Okay. We're going to have a comment here from the contractor.
Val Knezvik with Michelson. That side of the building is difficult to walk down as it is. So if you were to propose a ramp with landings, you would exceed the length available for putting in that type of a ramp.
I'm not sure that that's true, but if someone could at least do the exercise of taking a look to see if that's possible.
We could do it, but
Okay,
you don't want to walk down that ramp. It's difficult to walk.
I understand. I mean, an 8.33 ramp is not the easiest, but you would also at least have an accessible path of travel around the whole thing. So you wouldn't have to be looking at an elevator or a lift, and so you would actually be code compliant. The code allows you to go up to 8.33, vertical of 30 inches with a landing. And so can someone look at that? Because you may not need a hardship.
So let me ask you this, Madam Chair. If that were to exceed the $70,000, would we still be requesting relief from unreasonable hardship? Because I don't know, you could maybe address if that would exceed $70,000.
Well, see, but the code says that once you're over that threshold, you're going to make it compliant. So it could be that it's 30% that you're spending, so it doesn't necessarily cap a number. So it could be that we would say, yes, you need to spend that additional monies in order to be able to make it compliant, because then you've got a compliant site. There's not a cap. When you're over the threshold, then you're supposed to make it compliant. And you can come in for a hardship when it's disproportionate, and you can ask for that, but that doesn't mean that it will be granted.
Madam Chair, if I may, it sounds like, at least from some of the comments I've heard from both the board members, the applicant, and the city team, and there's some good questions as to whether a hardship is needed. Maybe at this point, it would make more sense to have a continuance in the item, allow staff to work and answer these kind of questions raised today and go into that, and to see if this matter needs to be brought forth again before the board with more information and et cetera, and maybe there's different processes that can go on avoidance of this. But it sounds like that's where the board is going with that,
Right.
so.
So is there a board member that wants to make a motion to continue this?
Yes, I would move to continue.
So do we have a second?
I'll second it. This is Jim.
All right, so can we take a roll call?
Thank you, Chair Sorkman. I'll take the roll call vote. Chair Sorkman?
Yes, to continue.
Board Member Coons?
Yes.
Board Member Maloney?
Yes.
And Board Member Marston?
Yes, continue.
Motion passes to continue indefinitely. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're on to the next item, which is the appeal of 601 East Montecito Street.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair. May I have the floor, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just for the record, Assistant City Attorney John Duemas. It's been brought to my weird echo feedback. It's been brought to my attention in separate conversations with board members that apparently there may be a conflict of interest as to this appeal. So because of that, I would like to ask each board member, three or at least the four board members here today, as to what that conflict of interest is, and whether, because of that conflict of interest, does it create a bias in which they're not able to hear the matter fairly and impartially. So I can actually start with you, Chair. Can you state your conflict of interest on the record, please?
So there is a potential for the appearance of bias, and so do not want to participate in this meeting.
Can you explain the reason for that?
We initially went into discussions with Jackie Inda about purchasing this building with her.
Okay. And have you had any ex parte conversations with anyone, the appellant, attorney, or anybody else in terms of this as well?
Yes, I had spoken to Tony Fisher multiple times before realizing there was going to be appeal, so that's why I don't want to participate in this discussion.
Understood. And thank you for that. Board Member Coons, can I turn to you? Can you state your conflict of interest on the record?
So I'm a member of the Board of Directors of Access Central Coast, a nonprofit organization, and we have had discussions about potentially buying the property. And one issue for us is the purchase price. And under my fiduciary duty to get the best price, it is my fiduciary duty as a member of the Board of Directors for Access Central Coast to get the best price possible. And this board's decision today will affect market value of that property. And therefore, I have this irreconcilable conflict of interest and must recuse myself.
Thank you. And you believe you have, with that irreconcilable conflict of interest, you believe you also have a bias as to the
You know,
matter?
I am not biased against the applicant in any way. I am torn by two conflicting legal duties.
Understood.
This is not a bias.
Thank you. And to Commissioner Marston, can you state your conflict of interest on the record?
Wait, one more point.
Absolutely.
It is a primary goal of our organization's purchasing of this property to help further the Casa de la Raza's mission. We are hoping to help reach a accommodation for both sides. And so if anything, this does not constitute a bias. I want to help the appellant.
But you feel you can't, at least because of your...
I feel that I can't separate my two roles because decision here today will affect the purchase price.
So therefore, to clarify, you couldn't impartially hear the matter then, essentially, because you're worried about the purchase price.
I am worried about a perception of bias.
Understood, thank you. And then, can I turn to you, Commissioner, Board Member Marston? Can you state your conflict on the record?
Well, pretty much like Nick's. I'm the vice president of the Access Central Coast, so it comes on to we're trying to get a good deal to help the CASA and also to get the best price we can get. And I have heard discussions, before we knew about the appeal, we had discussions about purchasing, and I heard from other people what Tony and the lady who runs the CASA said. So it wasn't, I didn't have ex parte with them, but I heard about it. So I just feel like I'm not content to say that I can't be non-biased at all. And I'm worried about, like Nick said, about the conflict, the possible conflict of interest, to make a decision where we're maybe going to get involved with the purchase.
Thank you, board members. Chair, if I may turn at this point, I'd like to at least address the appellant as to the process, at least the procedural process now moving forward and the reasons why, his options, if I may. Mr. Fisher, as you see, we have 3 board members that are conflicted out to hear this matter. We have a total of 6 board members right now seated for this board. That means we, even with the remaining 3 board members, 2 of which are not here today, we are unable to establish, to have a quorum under the Brown Act to hear the matter. Therefore, it's an impossibility for this board to have a hearing. There are two options I'd like to present to you, and also feel free to make any public comment that you would like. But we are, in terms of the procedural process, not the merits, because this board cannot, as you understand, hear the matter. One is that we can wait for a seventh board member to be appointed, but that may at the earliest be December, January, when council appoints the board member. So, and there is no definite, it's not definite that may occur, because we don't know if we'll get applicants, et cetera. The second option, because this is a very rare board, that it's a very technical board. So the next level is not an appeal to any other body internally in the city. It is a writ of mandate, is the next process on a decision here. What we would do is to provide you a written determination of what occurred today in the record. We would also in that explain the basis of why this was an impossibility for this board to hear the matter. And if you choose to file a writ of mandate, we will also state in that document that the city waives the defense of failure to exhaust administrative remedies, because you cannot have a hearing before this board. What we would consider the record at this point would be anything you submitted up to this date, as well as anything else the city has submitted up to this date for this hearing. So with that, I'd like to offer if you have any comments as to that.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members, which technically you are not, as you are seated right now, acting as board members because you have indicated a conflict. I'm not surprised by any of those comments. I expected that to be the situation when I looked at the situation some time ago. And I was surprised last night when I asked who was going to be chairing yesterday, when I asked the chief building official who was going to be chairing this meeting. I thought that was a hint that maybe somebody should get back to me so we wouldn't have to do all of this on the record. But all I got back was that Elizabeth Sorgman is the chair of the committee, or chair of the board, which I took to be an incomplete response because I asked something more. You are asking me to waive the right to a hearing before this board, a very technical board, a hearing process which all citizens are entitled to, and it's curious enough, this board does not have an appeal. There is no appeal right from this board to the city council. What you're in effect saying is we should elect to go the expense of attorney-driven writ of mandate in the courts, as opposed to getting things resolved at the city level. As you know, things are in flux. The city issued its press release on this matter, indicating that the red tags had been removed yesterday. That's the first communication in writing we have seen since the red tags were removed. I attempted to find out what the press release actually meant by contacting the person indicated in the press release. I asked the question, what does phase 2 look like? What items are on the list by the fire department and the building department for phase 2? I was given the non-response of, as we've discussed, there will be phase 2 items.
Mr. Fisher, I did want to, I don't mean to interrupt, but I did want to give you some leeway as to the procedural issues. As you know, this board can't hear this matter, and so you're going into the merits or the responses of the city. And so I am explaining the options. I wanted to give you an opportunity to comment whether if you preferred option 1, which is to wait until this board can have a quorum to hear the matter. And we did have to at least have the hearing, we at least had to at least be on the record to state why we are not able to offer this hearing instead of just a blanket email. We had to preserve that record to show that it's not out of, it is out of just an impossibility and nothing else. And that can be challenged. So you have the two options. Like I said, we will, after this hearing, send you the determination made because of the procedural issue, so you can have, and you can use that in your filing, so when you know that 90-day clock starts for the writ of mandate. But I do not, because this board has just claimed right now as to this issue, as to bias, they cannot go on to hear the merits of the matter, so.
I fully understand. I was really talking to you.
Okay, well,
Because I began by
I-
indicating the
I-
board doesn't exist
I
for
understand, but I'm not an
purposes of this
adjudicator.
hearing.
I am not an adjudicator on the matter. so-
Okay, but you are offering a solution.
Yes.
Which makes you an adjudicator.
Well, I'm offering the only solutions we can. We have
All right.
two options. You can take the next step of appeal, or you could wait, and so that's your decision. I'll leave that up to you.
Well, at this point, the concept of going off to court, what happens in the meantime?
Well, I will say this. I mean, in the meantime, if things are, and you can have that conversation with staff. I mean, if phase two, if the remaining red tag and yellow tag can be removed during this period of time, like I said, you have 90 days to file the writ. I mean, I don't want to advise, but talking lawyer to lawyer, I mean, you could wait and see where that process goes, and it could be moot because some red tags were removed. So the one affordability that a writ of mandate gives you is you have, once we send you that notice, it gives you 90 days. And so, you know, this could be moot before your filing deadline. And
Well,
I'm feeling I can have that
I'm going to
conversation as an
suggest that
attorney.
you, I'm going to suggest that you urge, we continue it, and we urge the city council to appoint another member.
Then we will elect that. And as you know, the appointment hearing is usually in December, January for that, so we will.
I'm aware.
We will elect to do that, though.
And I
Thank
know it's difficult to get people to sit on these boards, and I appreciate them who do it, and I've watched this board over the years. They do a valuable service.
Thank you, we appreciate the recognition. Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you.
I have a question.
No,
You can't,
you can't, this matter has been done. Thank you.
all right, so back to my, I think at this point, we just adjourn the meeting.
Correct. Did we need a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Oh, does someone want to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
It's John Maloney. I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Someone want to second that?
I'll second.
All right, so we've got a second. Do you want to take a roll call?
Quick roll call vote for that. Chair Sorgman,
Yes.
Board Member Coontz,
Yes.
Board Member Maloney,
Yes.
and Board Member Marston.
Yes.
Motion passes, and the meeting is adjourned at 3:25 PM.